For more on Israel's response to today's attacks is former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. He was also a member of the Israeli Knesset, their parliament. Ambassador Oren, thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Just to pick up on the point that I was reading there from the current ambassador, Ambassador Herzog, what will victory look like for Israel going forward?
Israel will look like, the victory will look like, Ayman, the restoration of peace and quiet along our borders and all of our borders. The return of our hostages have been taken. Punishing Hamas, certainly, to a great extent, so that this can never happen again. That's what victory would look like. It's not going to be a moment, with a flag atop a hill and declaring victory. It'll be a long struggle, a painful struggle. But Israel is determined to wage that struggle and determined to win.
I know this has been an extremely difficult day for Israel, and certainly it's still in the early stages of assessing how something like this happened. But as somebody who has served in the Israeli government, certainly been privy to a lot of intelligence and Israel's preparedness, are you shocked? Are you surprised by the tactical capabilities of Hamas to pull something like this off?
I'm surprised. I'm not shocked. I think Hamas has had a lot of help from its Iranian allies and has had for a long time. I am disappointed that we were not able to predict this in any serious way, caught off guard. And certainly when the smoke clears, there's going to be investigations. And in Israel, unlike many other countries, no one is above a responsibility. People will be held responsible if there was found that there were serious intelligence and tactical failures in this operation.
Why do you think Israel was not able to predict this? Israel's intelligence capabilities among the best in the world, if not the best, certainly the best in the region. But why do you think that Israel was not able to predict such an operation?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows right now. What we do know is that we have millions of Israelis sitting in bomb shelters, including my own family, my grandchildren. We have hundreds killed, thousands wounded, dozens held hostage. That is Israel's focus right now. It's not going to be finger pointing. There'll be time enough after this conflict ends. Right now, our focus is on returning our hostages, restoring safety to our families, to our communities, to our neighborhoods, and ensuring that Hamas will, or any other proxy of Iran, never does this again.
Can you share with us, since you brought up your family, can you share us what their condition is right now? What is the latest on what you're hearing on the ground inside Israel with the communities that at some point had been infiltrated by Hamas militants? And as we understand it, parts of those communities had been taken over, and there were ongoing gunfights between Israeli security forces and Hamas militants.
Well, that's what I understand as well. From my talking to my own children, my grandchildren, they are in bomb shelters. Sirens are going off over Tel Aviv. I live in southern Tel Aviv, and so sirens are going off there. There have been rockets fired, thousands of rockets fired at Israel so far, and school has been canceled. No one's going out. And we've been in this situation before with rocket fire. We have never been in a situation like this, where there are still active terrorists who are unaccounted for, who are apparently still operating within Israeli territory, holding hostages. And our army has been on a major call-up. All of my associates have been called up into uniform. And we are preparing for what could very well be a prolonged conflict. I'm hard-pressed to imagine that Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut, the head of Hezbollah, will sit quietly. I'm far from convinced that Hamas in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, will sit quietly, or even radical elements within the Israeli Arab population. So this could be a very prolonged conflict. And for many of us, the people who follow this conflict very closely, and I'm not alone in this, it was predictable. My own feeling was that Iran was very much frightened of the Saudi-Israeli peace treaty, which is being discussed, very much frightened by the prospect of a nuclearized Saudi Arabia, very much frightened by the prospect of return to Donald Trump to the presidency, and was looking for an opportunity to disrupt the Middle East, to destabilize it. Saw in Israel divided, frankly, deeply divided on political and juridical issues. Saw the United States not wanting to be entangled again in a Middle Eastern conflict. And so Iran saw an opportunity. And this, I think, was evident to many people in Israel, myself included. And we were braced for precisely this type of outbreak.
So I think, you're using the word a prolonged confrontation. You've talked about the possibility of other fronts opening up both internally and externally on Israel. I just want to, if I can, specifically ask you about Iran. We know that Iran has supported Hamas, but to what extent do you believe, or do you know of, certainly maybe from your time in office, that Iran was directing and perhaps tactically involved in these types of attacks against Israel? How much of this is Iran backing Hamas, and how much of this do you believe Iran dictating and coordinating Hamas's behavior?
Excellent question. During my time in government, I had the task, I won't say it's a fortunate task, of actually being in charge of the Gaza situation. And I learned an immense amount about it, and found that, Hamas doesn't take its orders directly from Tehran. It is greatly supported financially and tactically by Tehran. About 95% of all the rockets being fired at Israel today are actually made in Iran, smuggled into Israel into Gaza through the desert. The other 5% are engineered by Iran with the help of Iranian-trained Palestinian terrorist engineers. Iran also has a wholly owned and operated terrorist group known as Islamic Jihad in Gaza. That puts pressure on Hamas to undertake the type of operations that is undertaken today, this vicious terrorist attack. So Iran is deeply engaged, and Iran, as far as I can see, has every interest in destabilizing the Middle East to prevent the signing of an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, or to preempt a situation in Washington which may not be to its liking.
Let me ask you about the current Israeli prime minister for a moment, who has made it a mission of his to reverse the approach towards peace in the region. The Israeli prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has boasted about how there was always this thinking that if Israel pursued peace first with the Palestinians and then with the broader Arab world, they would be able to achieve it. He made it a central point of his governance, government, to go out and make peace with the broader Arab world and then come back and make peace and try to make peace with the Palestinians. Do you believe that calculation was a mistake now that we're seeing this type of attack, that ignoring the Palestinian issue, that not addressing the fundamental root causes of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict have led to this moment?
Well, keep in mind that it wasn't just Benjamin Netanyahu who made that conclusion. It was also the Arab leaders who made that conclusion, that they weren't going to wait around for the Palestinians to agree to a peace offer, because the Palestinians held the world's record for being offered peace but turned it down. And we're going back to ancient history, but it's 1937, 1947, 2000, 2001, 2008. They were offered a two-state solution, turned it down, usually with violence. And it was Arab leaders who said, enough is enough. We want to move ahead and develop our countries, take advantage of Israeli technology, and open the region in that way. So it wasn't just Benjamin Netanyahu, and I think it's a large segment of the Israeli population. I'm not in government anymore. I don't have to represent anybody, but I will tell you that a large majority of Israelis would like to see some type of progress toward peace with the Palestinians. But precisely this type of vicious attack by Hamas shows Israelis that if we ever reached, say, a two-state solution where the Palestinians were in charge of a state on the West Bank and would fall to Hamas within days. We have a Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, who's in the 18th year of his 4-year term. He won't stand for re-election because he knows Hamas would win. So we had a Palestinian state. It becomes the same type of situation, a Hamas-stand type operation. You have a situation in Gaza, the existential for the state of Israel. I mentioned I live in South Tel Aviv. I see those areas. I see the outskirts of Hebron from my rear window. We would not be in rocket range. We'd be in rifle range. And so majority of Israelis are actually going to be more deeply convinced that that type of progress toward, that type of solution, which is not going to be a solution, it could be our dissolution, is not in Israel's interest. I do, however, believe, and this is the last point, that by making peace with Arab nations, I hope with Saudi Arabia soon, it will create an environment, conditions in which progress toward some type of solution, or at least a better management of our conflict with the Palestinians, could be achieved.
Let me ask you finally just about the return to status quo. I mean, the comparisons that have been made throughout the day is that this is Israel's 9/11, not just on the side of the intelligence failure, but on the fact that everything going forward from here on out in Israel will not be the same. Obviously, fundamental to that is the relationship that your country has with the Palestinians, the ongoing occupation in the West Bank, and those conditions. Some have said that the situation there is part of the reason why there is this ongoing conflict. And if if you don't resolve that, you will never have a final peace agreement in the broader Arab world. Do you share that assessment? I mean, you have Israeli members of the government now, and certainly members of the coalition, calling for annexation of the West Bank, and some saying completely going into Gaza, invading it, and recreating another Nakba like in 1948.
The Hamas is not interested in a two-state solution. It's not interested in peace. Hamas is determined to destroy the state of Israel, to kill every one of us, to kill our families. These are the people who dragged civilians out of their cars today and shot them on the road. These are not people seeking peace. This is a vicious, medieval terrorist organization. And you could make a two-state solution tomorrow, and it wouldn't in any way impact Hamas. It would probably actually goad Hamas quickly. I've been around an awful long time. I was an advisor to the Rabin administration 30 years ago when we signed the Oslo Accords. Hamas launched a series of terrorist attacks and killed many, many Israelis, including a close member of my own family. It's the peace efforts to actually bring out the terror. And I think, once again, we're seeing a peace effort between Israel and Saudi Arabia has brought out this terror. That, along with other internal factors in Gaza, keep in mind, Hamas has its own internal politics, and we've been following very closely the rising opposition to Hamas oppression within the Gaza Strip. This could be a response to that as well, too. But the point being is, apples and oranges. It'd be great to be able to make some type of progress toward peace with the Palestinians. Anybody who thinks that peace process could have averted what happened today, what's happening right now, is deluding himself.
All right. Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, sir, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.